Imagine this. If molecules are too small to see, how do scientists know whether they're bent, pyramidal, tetrahedral, or perfectly linear? Why is water bent while carbon dioxide is straight, even though both contain oxygen? Why does ammonia have a pyramidal shape instead of being flat? And before we go any further, here's an even bigger question. Why should we care about the shape of a molecule at all? Here's why it matters more than you think. Shape controls everything. How a substance reacts, does it can dissolve in water, whether it can support life itself, and much more. Hence, shape is not a minor detail. It is destiny at the molecular level. So the real question, how can chemists predict the shape of a molecule before ever seeing it? The answer lies in one of the most powerful ideas in chemistry, VSEPR theory. In today's episode of Chemical Bonding Series, we're going to uncover the hidden geometry of molecules and importance of molecular shape in our life. Let's decode it. In last episode, we learned to draw Lewis structures, dot diagrams showing exactly how electrons are arranged around every atom in a molecule. But here's what Lewis structures cannot tell you. They're flat, two-dimensional, and molecules, real molecules in the real world, are three-dimensional objects. That's the gap VSEPR theory fills. It takes the Lewis structure you drew in episode 5 and brings it to life in 3 dimensions. It tells you the shape and, as we'll see, determines almost every property a molecule has. It was developed in the 1950s by Ronald Gillespie and Ronald Nyholm, took a beautifully simple idea, electrons repel, and built a framework that predicted molecular geometry with remarkable accuracy without requiring complex quantum mechanics. VSEPR stands for valence shell electron pair repulsion. It sounds intimidating, but when we break it down, the concept is beautifully simple. Valence shell, the outermost electron shell of an atom. That's where all the action happens. Electron pair. Electrons exist in pairs around the central atom. Repulsion, like charges repel. Electrons are all negatively charged. So every pair of electrons around the central atom pushes against every other pair. The result, all electron pairs, bonding and lone, spread themselves as far apart as physically possible to minimize that repulsion. Imagine you're at a party with a bunch of friends who really don't like each other. What do you all do? You spread out as far apart as possible, right? That's exactly what electron pairs do in the valence shell of an atom. The entire purpose of VSEPR theory is to predict molecular shape, bond angles, three-dimensional arrangement of atoms. And all of that starts with one simple question. How many electron groups surround the central atom? In VSEPR theory, we count electron groups. An electron group can be a single bond, a double bond, a triple bond, a lone pair. Here's the important rule. No matter whether it's a single, double, or triple bond, it counts as one electron group. For example, carbon dioxide has 2 double bonds between carbon and oxygen, but VSEPR counts them as only 2 electron groups. Once we know the number of electron groups, predicting shape becomes easy. Let's see how. In VSEPR theory, we count electron groups. An electron group can be a single bond, a double bond, a triple bond, a lone pair. Here's the important rule. No matter whether it's a single, double, or triple bond, it counts as one electron group. For example, carbon dioxide has 2 double bonds between carbon and oxygen, but VSEPR counts them as only 2 electron groups. Once we know the number of electron groups, predicting shape becomes easy. Let's see how. Suppose a central atom has 2 electron groups. What happens when 2 negatively charged clouds repel each other with nothing else in the way? They go to opposite ends, as far apart as they can get, 180 degrees. A straight line, which is the linear shape. Classic examples is carbon dioxide, CO2, which we worked through in episode 5. 2 double bonds, no lone pairs on carbon, 180 degrees. Perfectly straight. If you've ever seen a molecular diagram of CO2 with that oxygen double bonds, carbon, double bonds, oxygen, that's not just notation. That's the literal shape of the molecule in space. But what happens when we add another electron group? For predict the shape, imagine 3 people standing around a circular table. To maximize space, they don't stand together. They spread out evenly. The same happens with 3 electron groups. 3 clouds repel each other symmetrically in a plane. They land at the corners of a flat equilateral triangle. Bond angles of exactly 120 degrees. This shape is called trigonal planar because it has 3 bonds arranged in a plane. Best example, boron trifluoride, BF3. Boron sits in the center, 3 fluorines point outward at 120 degrees each, flat as a dinner plate. Another great example, sulfur trioxide, SO3, one of the molecules responsible for acid rain, also perfectly trigonal planar. No atom is above or below. But chemistry gets even more interesting when we move to 4 electron groups, and I want you to really visualize it. If you have 4 balloons and you tie them all at the center, they naturally push out into a shape called a tetrahedron, a triangular pyramid with 4 equal faces. That's exactly what 4 electron pairs do around a central atom. Each pair points to one corner of a tetrahedron. Bond angle, 109.5 degrees. Perfect. Symmetrical. The most famous example of tetrahedral molecule is methane, CH4. Carbon in the center, 4 hydrogens pointing outward in 4 directions equally, 109.5 degrees in every direction. Now let's introduce a new character into the story, lone pairs. Until now, we've only looked at bonding electrons, but some electron pairs don't participate in bonding. These are called lone pairs. Lone pairs occupy space too, and because they belong to only one atom, their electron cloud is more concentrated. As a result, lone pairs repel more strongly than bonding pairs. Lone pairs tops in order of repulsion. Lone pair-bond pair is intermediated and bond-bond pair has lowest repulsion. This stronger repulsion changes molecular shape. Let's see the most famous example. Consider water. Lewis structure shows 2 bonds between oxygen and hydrogen and 2 lone pairs on oxygen. Total electron groups are 4. According to VSEPR, the electron geometry is tetrahedral. But here's the catch. 2 positions are occupied by lone pairs. Only 2 positions contain atoms which create linear shape, but when we look at the atoms, the shape appears bent. Why? Because those 2 lone pairs are bigger and pushier than bonding pairs. They squeeze the hydrogen atoms inward. So water is not tetrahedral in molecular shape, despite having 4 electron groups. It is bent or angular, having the bond angle is about 104.5 degrees. This is a perfect demonstration of electron repulsion in action. Now, you might surprise that water isn't the only molecule affected by lone pairs. Let's look at ammonia, NH3. Nitrogen has 3 bonds and 1 lone pair. Total 4 electron groups. Again, electron geometry is tetrahedral, but one position is occupied by a lone pair. The visible molecular shape becomes trigonal pyramidal. Imagine a pyramid with nitrogen at the top and 3 hydrogens forming the base. The bond angle decreases slightly to around 107 degrees. Again, the lone pair is responsible. Let's pause and appreciate one of the most elegant patterns in all of VSEPR theory, the lone pair squeeze. Look at this series of molecules having 4 electron groups. In methane, we found bond angle of 109.5 degrees with 0 lone pairs. Now, if we consider ammonia, which has 1 lone pair, bond angle becomes 107 degrees, and in water, bond angle shrinks to 104.5 degrees, because central atom oxygen has with 2 lone pairs. Each time we add a lone pair, the bond angle shrinks by about 2.5 degrees. Why? Because lone pairs are not the same as bonding pairs. A bonding pair is shared between 2 nuclei. It's pulled toward both atoms, making it relatively slim and directional. A lone pair belongs to only one atom. It's fatter, more diffuse, and spreads out more around the nucleus. Bigger electron cloud means bigger repulsion. So lone pairs push bonding pairs closer together more forcefully than bonding pairs push each other. The result? Each lone pair compresses the bond angles a little more. Let's step towards students' favorite question: when will I ever use this? And the answer is every time you interact with chemistry, which is every second of your life, because shape determines many chemical properties. For example, water's bent shape makes it polar. Carbon dioxide is linear and nonpolar. These differences affect solubility, boiling point, biological activity, and chemical reactions. In fact, the shape of molecules determines how drugs interact with the human body. A tiny change in geometry can completely change a molecule's behavior. So, molecular shape is far more than just a diagram in a textbook. It's one of chemistry's most important concepts. So, today, we discovered that molecules aren't random collections of atoms. Their shapes are determined by a simple principle. Electron pairs repel each other and arrange themselves as far apart as possible. That's the core idea behind VSEPR theory. Hit like if this episode clicked for you, subscribe to Decoding Education, and share this with someone who thinks chemistry is just memorization. Because it isn't. It's logic and geometry. It's electrons fighting for space. And now you can see it. Thanks for watching. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep decoding science.